Greetings and welcome to this newest tutorial of mine. I am Dizzy from Team Titanicorn, and this one is a Raj from Parabellum Wargames Conquest Sorcerer Kings starter set, where I try to bring you one tutorial for each unit that is in there. So this is the Raj, followed up in the future by the Rajakur, the Gaul, and the Afrit. The synopsis for my Sorcerer Kings army is a very colorful cloth with reds, greens, yellow, purplish, pinkish color combined together with these turquoise jewelry and flasks and all these fancy lighting effects by fireballs, or in the upcoming releases for the Jinn, like whitish greenish for the wind scheme. So I go to all the steps. This is a long-term tutorial. You can look at the timeline at the bottom of the video to get the part that interests you most, or you grab a snack and a drink and watch the full tutorial before you start to paint your own Sorcerer Kings. So lean back and enjoy this Raj tutorial. We start with the primed miniature. I primed it black, and as I've got some paint in my airbrush, I sprayed it with a brownish tone, and this is the only case. You can start from black, no worries. First things first, I started with a red cloth and gave it a coat of scarlet red via Game Air through the airbrush. And as you can see, all the colors I've used are in the left upper hand corner, and you can use those colors or an equivalent from another company that you like the most. So give it some coats here and there. This is my base red tone, like in the Sorcerer's tutorial you maybe watched already. It's the same red. After this, I block out the colors on the green parts. I started with a desaturated green, angel green from Vallejo Game Air to give it a good base coat, and add up some brighter greens later through the airbrush. All these steps I've done with the airbrush. You could also apply with the brush, no worries. I tend to go with these base color steps with an airbrush due to my limited hobby time, and I get these colors applied a lot quicker. Followed up is a Scorpio Red. Just put some drops into the airbrush and give it a go, no worries here, and focus more on the upper parts. This one would be the first highlight step with your brush, and with the airbrush the highlighting is way easier. I try to spray the areas slightly from above, so if you turn the miniature around you also see the angel green showing underneath, and I've got my first three-dimensional highlight applied. Next up, to get a feeling for the whole miniature, I apply a dark silvery tone on all the parts that should be silver metal. So these armor pieces on the arm, the plate skirt, is it a plate pattern or is it chainmail? No, I think it's a plate. Scales is it called, I guess, a scale mail. And apply this color to all the parts that should be silvery. Next up, I switch to a brighter silver tone, in this case Lead Belcher by Citadel Game, and I apply it with a sponge. Just grab some paint on the sponge, stipple it on a paper towel like you do on the dry brushing with a brush, and stipple it onto the miniature, so you get a bit of a rougher surface, and this stippling would apply to the highlights as well. And second this step with Rune Fang steel, an even brighter silver tone, and in this case the metal colors are nearly done. There would be only one highlight in the aftermath of the gold tones, but this is nearly the silver metals done, and it's fast, it's quick, and it's effectful. Next up, I pick out all the parts that should be goldish or brassy with Balthasar Gold by Citadel. All these small ornamentations and maybe the hilt and pommel of the scimitar, and pick out some details here and there. After this is done, I go to a shade, because I think there needs to be a bit more depth, and so I apply it onto these goldish parts and let the shade pool in the recesses between the goldish parts and the silver parts, or the subsequent areas that's around the goldish parts. I tend not to overspill to the silver areas, just give the gold another matte finish with this shade, and give it a bit more depth around the ornamentation. Because if I apply the highlight color Runelord Brass later, it would be brighter, and the differentiation between brass and silver wouldn't be that great. So this part is my way to separate these two colors. And then I apply some shade onto the silver parts, so on the armor in the recesses, just like a black lining, something on the scales, apply some shade there, and dilute it on the miniature with a bit of water afterwards. So no magic applied here, just some paint and steady brushwork to give it more definition all around. After we applied this paint, we go on to the highlighting stage. As mentioned before, the silver is kind of done, so I reapply Balthasar Gold onto the ornamentation here and there, and leave some of the shaded Balthasar Gold in the recesses or on random patches onto the ornamentation on the backplate and here and there, so that these matte finished shaded Balthasar Gold elements show through here and there. This gives more definition due to having more variation onto a material. This looks more natural if there is more variation. After this I apply Runelord Brass in a similar manner here and there, pick out some spots where maybe the light would hit and brighten up the ornament on the armor, and leave the color that's applied on the previous step showing through as well. You can see where the brush hits the miniature here. Yes, I know it's sped up to 350%, that the video isn't that long, but I guess you get the deal here. You could theoretically ignore the right shoulder part of the miniature, cause the flame effect would be applied there later, but I am kind of sucker of painting the whole thing, even knowing that there will be some overspray with a fiery light effect later. So on these chin or lower leg armor, I apply the paint onto the outer surfaces and leave the inner side of the lower leg in the previous color. Apply a second coat of this paint onto hilt and pommel of the scimitar. Of course, there is the most light, or theoretically there could be the place where the light hit the most. And after that I apply some Rune Fang steel here and there onto the brassy parts for a final light reflex, and on some of these scales here and there to give it a feeling that it is a polished, bright scale metal that doesn't even catch some rust like I do on the 100 Kingdoms and onto the other miniatures I paint. To give it more of a separation in between the different factions I paint. And the focus is here onto the scimitar on the edge. No worn off rust effects there, just a straight line on the edge to give it the feeling of sharpness. After the metals are done, it is time to apply more paint to the miniature before we go to the magical effect. I apply a dark brown, kind of dark walnutty brown to all the parts that should be brown later. So the skin on my Sorcerer Kings are dark toned, and all these leather parts would be painted in the same color, in the same base color. So I go over all the other areas that hadn't been painted previously, and then I apply Baneblade Brown, followed by Karak Stone via dry brushing onto the base, cause the next paint that would be applied should be the leather tone on the boots, and I don't want him to have some kind of dirty boots, so I need to paint the base previously before I go on to the boots. There is this small necklace chain thing, and the skull on the base that would be painted in a Steel Legion drab, so in a drab dark color, and these small pieces here on there of thread on the boots. And then I go on to the skin tone. This next step is Kadashan Flesh Tone. It is the previously walnut color with a bit of rosy tint, so a bit of red is applied here into the mix, and this would give the differentiation between leather and the skin tone later. The skin tone would be more of a rosy reddish tone, and the leathers would go into a beige, slightly worn tone to differentiate these two colors. For even brighter leather, I apply this tone onto the leather too. As you can see here, just slop it on here and there where you think the light would hit the surfaces. And follow this one up on the skin tone with a color that's called Gore Thor Brown. It's an even more desaturated, brighter variation of the previous color, and add some highlights here and there where you can think the light would hit the miniature the most. So maybe on the knuckles, on the elbow, on some of the areas in the face, so maybe the eyebrows and the nose. And as you can see, I apply some minor details onto the leather too, because this would be the linking part into between the brown and the beige tone that the colors didn't contrast that heavily in one and the same material. And if you want to see how to paint these worn leather parts in more detail, you can switch to my 100 Kings Knights of the Crimson Tower tutorial. There are large areas of leather where I show these worn leather techniques in more detail, and I guess there is a playlist with Conquest on my channel where you can check it out. Next color for the flesh tone is Night Questor Flesh, a rather rosy, skinny tone, and apply this one onto the areas where the light would hit the most to give it a kind of living vibe, because when the flesh is just brown, it's just brown, and is there a kind of tint of a rosy fleshy parts, it would look more natural. Next up, all the leather parts, and the next step is a beige tone. In this case it's Bane Blade Brown, applied on all these small leather parts, and didn't use straight lines on the edges, some small lines and small dots to give it the appearance of kind of roughed up leather, but not that intense like on the other miniatures, where the feeling is more of a rusted, roughed up battle-worn soldier. This one, yes, there is some defects in the leather parts, but it's just the natural worn leather, and not these. I've been into war for kinda 6-8 years and didn't even oil my leather straps and belts, so this one is more of a civilized guy, and so he needs just a bit more of a civilized overall look, like getting the leathers worn but not totally destroyed. If you don't like the contrast between these beige and rosy parts on the skin and the leather, you can go with maybe a more orangey appearance onto the leather tones with maybe Citadel's Mournfang Brown and Scrag Brown. It's just up to you. I like my leathers desaturated, not that obvious. Next up, for leather, these small necklace things and even the skull on the base is a brighter beige tone. This is Karak Stone by Citadel. Just apply some dots of paint here and there and leave the previously applied color showing through. In this case I pick the spots where I think the light would hit the defect area on the leather and add an additional highlight there. Up to the skull, paint it around the hole there, but you didn't do it if there are no skulls on your base. I'm a sucker for this. I like skulls here and there, give more of a grim vibe. And the next thing is the necklace with Ushapti bone, and of course the skull on the base with Ushapti bone, followed up by a final highlight with Pallid Witch Flesh. This is an off-white with a slightly yellowish tint mixed in. Give the skull a bit more definition and we're done. Next up, the tedious work of the cloth. I apply Scarlet Red with a brush here onto the erased surfaces to give it more vibrancy. Of course, maybe through the airbrush there is more of a smooth finish, and I want some more contrasting, stark areas here and there where the folds join together on the cloth. Theoretically, if you don't got the time and if you want cut corners, you can leave this step and go on to the next color. Of course, the next color I apply is Corn Red by Citadel, and this Scarlet Red from Vallejo and Corn Red didn't differentiate that much. As you can see here in the upcoming step, this is Corn Red applied the same way through the brush, and leave some of the previously applied Scarlet Red showing through. This is exactly the same technique I did use on the Sorcerer Kings Sorceress in the other video tutorial, so I thought of leaving this step out and heading you to the other tutorial, but finally I got the idea, no, this needs to be part of this tutorial. because I cannot. I didn't want you to check out the other tutorial in case of painting the miniature this way. So the next step is some transition color between Corn Red and GW's Mephiston Red. This is just a mix in between. You could go for a color like Wozdaka Red by Citadel for the next step, but this would tend to go more on the desaturated route with the other highlights that need to be applied later, and this one tends to fit my paint scheme better. Focus on all these raised areas, leave the previously painted color showing through as always, as we do always with highlighting, and apply thin or relatively thin coats. As you've seen, I applied 1 tip of paint each and added 1 drop of water there to give it more flow and improve the color mixing. Then there was some straight lines onto the cloth for some cloth defects, also like I done on the Sorceress, to give the appeal of some minor texture here and there on the larger surfaces. Added some more Mephiston Red into the mix, applied the color once more to give it even more variation, but don't get too bright highlights in one step or a too stark transition in between colors, so that it looks natural, like these trousers should appeal, I guess. Of course, it's a smooth textile, and it would lay itself in smooth folds, and the stark contrast didn't contribute to the overall feeling here and there. Add a bit of Wild Rider Red into the mix for a final mixed highlight here and there. Some of the folds, some of these small dots and lines for textile defects here and there. No magic, just tedious work. And you can see all the areas I hit with paint in the video. Next up is a step of Wild Rider Red for the final ruffed highlights. Of course, these are more of the textile defect places here and there. As you can see, there are more small dots, not these straight lines over all the folds. These are these, as I tend to mention them, these worn highlights, some small lines and dots onto the raised areas to give it a more natural feeling. Some final highlight is Deathclaw Brown, cause I tend to go for a kind of satin feeling on my cloth parts, and satin got a slight gloss on the textile, so there needs to be a highlight that's rather off the natural colors that I used before, because this is a slightly orangey brown that does not apply 100% to the red spectrum, but in this case it fit the scheme nicely. Onto the green cloth. The first color to be applied is Mood Green. It's a awesome transition to the previously applied Scorpio Green. Hit all these small folds and highlight or highlightable areas here and there into these scarf and sash and into his turban. Just make sure that you don't hit the previously painted areas, cause you can save time there. If you spill over the paint, don't worry, you just can repair every mishap with a few strokes of the brush. The highlighted areas onto his scarf that's going around the upper arm would be a bit broader. Of course, there needs to be some more highlighting color, so the previously applied highlight needs to be a bit thicker so that the other highlights stick better there. Just apply this paint like we did previously onto the trousers. Leave some of the Scorpion red and the Angel red showing through. And if you want to go for a ultra vibrant color, you can leave the color there. I tend to go with, yes, vibrant and very colorful, but the color should be slightly desaturated into the highlights, that it isn't that much of a color explosion and wouldn't deter from the magical fire effect later. Because my fire effects are kinda desaturated orangey, and that they would work better with a surrounding that is more desaturated itself. Now I mix mood green and nurgling green into roughly equal parts to get a kinda lime color here, and apply the paint as on the previous steps. Just let some of the mood green showing through here and there, and focus more on the areas where light would hit the cloth. As mentioned previously, with the shoulder armor, you could theoretically completely avoid the upper part of the scarf, because there would be this magical effect. But if you don't want to go with a OSL, object source lighting effect, you need to paint these areas, and my service to you is that I paint those as well in the tutorial. On the turban, I try to mimic these small folds that are part of the technique that it's wrapped around the head, so that some of the details stick out more and there is just more interest when I paint the OSL and the subsequent details then. Next up, mix another batch of nurgling green into the color. This is kinda roughly 2:1 nurgling green to mood green, and this would be the final greenish highlight before I go on to the next color in the mix to desaturate the color more. And in this case I tend to go to a off-white color that it isn't that cold later, and go to Palette Witch Flash, because as I previously mentioned, there is a slight yellow tint in the paint, and this would be a perfect match to mix it into a green tone, because the green keeps the yellow keeps the green kinda warm. Just straight plain white would make it into a relatively cold green color in the highlights. There it is, Palette Witch Flash. So we got roughly a mix of 1 part mood green, 2 parts nurgling green, 1 part Palette Witch Flash. And as you can see here, I apply it as previously mentioned. There is no magic, it's just the repetition of the same steps throughout the miniature. Apply the paint on the raised areas, leave some of the previously applied paint showing through. So no magic applied. This is later for the fireball. In the meantime, maybe you want to type in the comment section down below what you like on this tutorial the most. If you like more of these long-term videos or just rather short ones with several different topics. So, for example, one video for reddish clothes, one video for greenish clothes, one video for metal tones, one video for leather, one for OSL and stuff like that? Or do you like these kind of compilation videos? This is the miniature I paint, and these are all the techniques I applied with this miniature. So next up is a second go of this paint to brighten the cloth up even more, and I'm excited what you will write down into the comments. And if you watched the videos to this part, so I got a reference, maybe type SK exclamation mark into the comments if you watched the video until this point. So the SK is for Sorcerer Kings. So all the tedium is nearly done. We got the cloth, we got the leather parts, we got all the metals. There are some minor details that need to be painted next, and these are the parts of Jewlery and these small flask that he got hanging on his sash, or better to say on his belt. I tend to go with these glass thing, like with the jewels with a turquoise touch, so that there are not that much different colors on a miniature, and it would just look messy due to all these different colors. A final apply of palette witch flash with a pure just out of the pot. Here and there some small stipply lines for the worn off effect. And we go on to the jewelry. The base color is a dark turquoise. This one is Nipple green by Citadel on these small jewels on the necklace. Yes, there would be some light obscuring the color later, but maybe you don't want to paint the OSL as mentioned previously, so I show you the whole step. And this Raj got some small jewel pieces onto his chin armor, so I paint those as well. Now, standard jewelry technique, just apply the next brighter color onto the right lower corner of the jewelry. This is Cigarette Green by Citadel, and as well apply this color onto the right lower area of the flask, as you can see here. Next color is Ghost Blaster Green, even less onto the right far corner of the jewel, so that there is a kind of sparkly light effect. When the light hits from the left upper corner, the jewel would show its true color on the right lower, on the diagonally different side, and a small reflection with Ulthuan gray in the left upper corner where the light really hits. So this is a standard jewel technique that I use all the time, and it's fine. It's very basic but very effectful. Just here and there, two small dots of paint into the flask that there is a reflection too. And I apply Balthazar Gold followed by Rune Lord Brass onto these small details on the belt here that I didn't hassle to paint previously, because I know I would overspill the brown. And I give the flask some metal thread lining, so that is look more interesting to the eye with Balthazar Gold and Rune Lord Brass. So it's a small glass flask into a supporting structure of brass. Didn't it look awesome? I think so. Then there is Administratum Grey for the eyes. Just small lines here and there. And apply a small dot of a color of your liking into the eye, so the pupil is painted. This could be Corvus black, or a brown tone, or a dark blue tone, whatever you like. And as you've seen previously, I applied a minor amount of Administratum Gray onto the eyebrow, and to the right eyebrow, for the later color reflection. This is the magic part. In truth, it's the magic part. I apply Aged White by Vallejo Model Air onto the fireball and onto some of the surrounding areas here and there. Yes, you could mask the rest of the model, but there would be some OSL overspill, so it's okay if I hit some areas here and there. Focus these off-white, slightly yellowish tone to the fireball, where the heat would be the most. And then I apply some gold yellow Vallejo Game Air onto the areas where it's kind of the hottest part in the hand of the guy. This is to give it a mixed tone of orange later, when I apply the red color, where I, yes, honestly screwed up a bit, but you will see it here. I apply the next paint. This is a too bright-ish tone. I thought previously this is bloody red from Vallejo Game Air, and I thought, oh god, this is too bright, I need to darken it down. And this was my mistake here. Yes, this was the color I needed to apply. I just screwed up and thought, oh god, it's too reddish red. Maybe I've got deterred by the red tone of the trousers in combination with this one, and gone on to apply Scarlet Red onto the flame and the surrounding areas. And yes, it gotten a bit dark, so I needed to brighten it up later. But this is a nice example to show you that there is no worry in making some minor mistakes. You could fix them later. I apply these Scarlet Red on the surrounding areas where maybe the sheen of the fireball would hit the guy. So this is the shoulder, the upper part of the right arm, the hand, some areas of the right chest and the right side of the face and the turban. And then I mix Scarlet Red with gold yellow. In this part I thought, yes, this is the right way, and this is how I need to paint the miniature, and right now I got the feeling, oh crap, back to bloody red. So I apply the bloody red here and there, focus on the kind of raised areas, but the fire didn't need that much of the definition to give it a more natural feeling, so if there is some overspill into the lower areas of the flame, no worry. And I applied the bloody red onto the OSL areas. Next up, bloody red mixed with gold yellow, kinda equal parts, and repeat the step. Keep in mind the flame is the brightest where it is the hottest, so I tend to go to the fireball in the hand with these highlights and apply gold yellow next to give the OSL a more transition from red to orange, the nearest to the fireball. And then apply these golden yellow into these small recesses in the hand, that it's more yellowish there, where I guess where the magic leaves the hands would be the brightest, but I don't go too much onto yellow and white, because I think it's a magical flame and it is not a extremely hot flame, and I burn myself flame. Some charred brown onto the kind of smoke trail of the fireball, because it tends to go from white to yellow to orange to red to brown to black in a flame when you paint it, and this is my way to give this one a transition. So after this is done, I apply some gold yellow onto the miniature by brush and apply it into these small recesses between the fingers and on some areas on the fireball that's the lowest, cause this one is not a highlight, it's a rather low light. The brightest area is in the deepest recess. You need to think the other way around than normally on miniature painting. And I tend to give you this flame effect tutorial in a separate video. If you like this one, just write it down in the comment below if you think it's useful to get a separate Fire OSL part of this video. Next up, some charred brown with the brush onto the smoke trail there to give it more definition, and apply some of this onto the kind of smoky trail onto the miniature here and there, so that it isn't a solid transition. There are some parts that irritate the eye on the way to the smoke trail, but this would look more natural. Next up is a highlight on all these small OSL areas. This is a Fire Dragon Bright, a really bright orange, and I apply it onto these small scales, on some of the folds on the cloth, on some of the raised areas on the necklace and on the armor here and there, to give it the feeling that this area is hit by the most light and there's a small reflection. This drives the effect of the OSL home, really. As you can see here, it looks like, yes, this is a real light source that hits the surfaces. Just Google or internet search for some campfire pics where people tend to sit around the campfire. All around them it's dark-ish. Where the light hits, it's more of this yellowish orangey tone, and where it hits the most, where the most reflection on the surface, there is a even brighter tone. So I tend to work this tone out with this step. And then it's done. You could repair some overspill here and there, so maybe if you don't like the OSL, if it hits too many areas or too much surface, you can rework the green or the metal tones here and there to reduce the OSL light effect. I did it after I done this video, removed a bit of color, and maybe you could remove some of the silver and brass tones to focus the OSL more into the center of the right body half. And after this, I've gone with the basing technique I used previously. You just look up the 100 Kingdoms, Crimson Tower Knight. There I show you this whole process with the bright greenish theme. I tend to go for my bases. And after this, you only need to apply some satin or matte varnish. I didn't apply it here and that's at this step, because the base needs to dry a bit more, that there is no frosting due to the watery content of the white glue. And we're done with this tutorial. I hope you liked it and you could take something of these techniques home and apply it to your miniatures. If you like to share your minis, I'm part of the international Discord and the German Discord for Conquest. Just search for Dizzy, located in Germany, Vanguard, and you can show me your minis. I would like to see them, and we see us in the next one. That would be hopefully the Rajakur or the Gaul, whatever you like to see next. Till then, I'm Dizzy. Keep on wargaming!